This is episode 96 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and my guest tonight is making his seventh appearance on the podcast. He's a contributor for HeavyHockey.com, Ryan Lotsberg. Ryan, how's it going tonight?
Oh, pretty good, Eric. How are things with you?
Not too bad, man. And obviously, things would be going even better for the both of us and everyone in oil country, for that matter, if the Oilers were headed home up 2-0 in the series. But if someone had told you before the playoffs that the Oilers would have home ice advantage going into a best-of-5 West final, you would have taken that deal, right?
Yeah, there's nothing to be upset about for sure. I mean, obviously we would have liked to have taken both in Dallas, but getting a split against a tough Stars team on the road is a pretty good start.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing that I said going into these first two games is you have to get a split in Dallas because you don't want to be coming home needing to win 4 out of the next 5 games against the best team in the conference. But I think after you get that first win, you start to get a little bit greedy, don't you?
I mean, yeah, obviously. I mean, every athlete's out there to win every game, right? Like, they don't want to lose ever. But so yeah, once you get that first one, it's like, okay, how do we get the next one? Let's get the next one. And I don't know if they just overthought it or what, but Dallas is a great team. They were inevitably going to push back, and it was always a long shot that we were going to win 2 down south.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, the way they came out, it looked early on like the Oilers might be able to steal that second game, though.
They had a great start in that game for sure. And in the end, I think it was a coin flip. Like, it was a deflection that went in for the game winner. And then the 3-1 goal was just an empty netter, right? So that it really could have gone either way.
Yeah. And tonight we'll be recapping games 1 and 2 of the 2024 Western Conference Final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. But first, I want to get your thoughts on Adam Henrique, who could be returning to the Oilers lineup for Game 3 on Monday night after suffering an ankle injury in the opening round of the playoffs against the LA Kings more than 3 weeks ago. Ryan, Henrique wasn't one of your top 5 trade targets for the Oilers the last time you were on the podcast in March, but I want to know, what are your overall thoughts on Henrique since joining the Orange and Blue?
I think that Henrique has honestly just been okay. Like, I'm looking at his point totals. I got 9 points in 22 games down the stretch in the regular season. Goal scoring was about on pace to 6 goals, but only 3 assists. Right, so like the playmaking wasn't there, and the overall offense that we're used to seeing out of him wasn't there. So yeah, obviously a little bit of a reduced role, but he did get quite a bit of time with Leon Draisaitl down the stretch, and he's finished off the season and entered the playoffs on that line with McDavid and Hyman. So if you look at his underlying stats, most of them are pretty mediocre, like below 50%, but his goal share has been fantastic. So something positive is happening when he's on the ice, at least. But I don't think he's been the impact player that Holland might have hoping he would be, or might have been hoping he would be.
Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of Oilers fans that were hoping for one of the bigger names on the trade market back in March, but I think Henrique has fit in well with this group. Like you said, he does have 6 goals in 22 games with the Oilers, so under a point per game, or half a point per game, I should say. But once he settled in with his new team, he started to pick up the offense. There was a stretch where he had 5 goals in 12 games, and he's also become a fixture on the penalty kill, and he can play either center or the wing. So he has been a solid addition, in my opinion. But some of the names that you laid out when the last time you were on the show, obviously those are more impact players, and probably you'd like to have the guy that you gave a first-round pickup for having more of an offensive contribution. But at the same time, after making the playoffs for just the 3rd time in his 13-year career this season, I think he's going to be extremely motivated to get back in the lineup and have an impact. And Ryan, if you were coaching this team, where would you play Henrique tomorrow night?
If it was me, I would take a look at the third line, because the third line has just been struggling all playoffs long. And I don't want to pinpoint it on one guy because there's been a lot of guys rotating through that line, but Ryan McLeod has been the fixture on that third line the entire playoffs. He's got 0 points in 14 games compared to 5 points in 12 games last year. And I actually just did a piece on him for Heavy Hockey today. But just the numbers for this year compared to last playoffs for Ryan McLeod are way down all across the board. So McLeod is clearly struggling. So I think what I would do is I would move McLeod to the wing to limit some of the responsibility on him, and then I'd put Henrique at third line center.
Yeah, and I think that Henrique was brought in to be the third line center, but I didn't mind him on the top line with McDavid and Hyman when he was moved up the lineup. But ultimately, I like Nugent Hopkins better in that spot. That was the best line in hockey this season, and I don't want to break that trio up. And now that Dylan Holloway is playing well in the top six, I think that Henrique should probably start on the third line as well. Maybe alongside Foegele and McLeod, like you said. And if you move McLeod to the wing, that also changes things up a little bit. And like you said, the third line has been the weakest line throughout the playoffs. So hopefully Henrique can give that line a bit of an offensive boost while still playing solid two-way hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the reason you go and get a guy like Henrique is because of his versatility. He can play up and down the lineup. I'm totally with you on the Nugent Hopkins line with McDavid and Hyman. That was a fantastic line all year long. I don't know why we started the playoffs with Henrique on that top line. It's just kind of, I know most coaches don't like to mess with a winning lineup, and they were doing well for a little bit there, aside from the last two games. But yeah,
I think it was just to give Draisaitl a little more skill on his wing.
Yeah, and they had Nugent Hopkins on Draisaitl's wing there. That's correct, right? Yeah, I've always been a proponent of Dry and Nuge playing together. Like I still want to see Nugent Hopkins centering that line with Draisaitl on the wing. That's a combo that hasn't been done before, but it's been working so well with Nugent Hopkins up with Hyman and McDavid. I don't know why you mess with that.
Right. And it's definitely a luxury that you can move Nugent Hopkins back to center whenever you want, but he has played the wing for most of the last few years. So I'm sure that there's a certain amount of comfortability that's started to set in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nugent Hopkins can competently center a second line, but the results aren't exactly elite when he's centering the second line.
Usually
right?
When they do that, it's because they're loading up McDavid and Draisaitl on the top line. And I think basically, as much as you'd love that line to contribute a little bit more, you're hoping that going with the nuclear option on the first line is going to do most of the offense for you. And all that second line needs to do is just break even.
Yeah, I mean, and when you have the guys that we have, like Nuge or Evander Kane, or even if it's a Henrique up there, like you want those guys to produce. You're paying them to produce, right? So you're hoping if they're on a second line that they're gonna do more than break even. But the reality is that's not usually how that goes down. You're hoping that Connor and Leon pile up the points while they're playing together, and then you're hoping that a second line can, like you say, break even and hold their own.
And, we also saw Foegele and McLeod have good success playing alongside Draisaitl on the second line for a stretch earlier this season. Would you ever consider going back to that second line in the playoffs now and maybe trying to, if you put Henrique and Kane down on the third line, get that line going as well?
The wonderful thing about the way this team is built is that you can do a whole bunch of different things like that, and it can still work. So yeah, like that second line with McLeod and Foegele with Draisaitl, that was a really good line throughout the season. Like that was kind of what got the 16-game win streak going for us this year. Right. So
I mean, look at the even strength numbers. Foegele and McLeod were two of the Oilers' best producers at 5-on-5 during that run.
They were, yeah. Like that line was the top producing line. They were putting up more points than the Nuge McDavid Hyman line was during that stretch.
And that also makes it even more frustrating for why McLeod has been on this long pointless drought. I mean, we're seeing him provide good shot suppression, and he's always skating the puck up ice, but the problem is that once he gets over the offensive blue line, not much is happening.
Yeah, not a lot is happening. Like he's never been a physical player. He always has trouble getting to the inside of the ice, and he's just not getting to pucks to win battles. Like he's not in the forecheck quickly enough. But the thing of it is, he's not playing shutdown defense. His scoring chances are the scoring chances allowed are way up from McLeod last year compared to last year, and the scoring chances are way down compared to last year. Right, so he's struggling at both ends of the ice. Yeah. It's like a lot of people are talking about how McLeod is playing shutdown defense. Like he isn't. He just isn't.
Yeah, well, like I said, hopefully when you get Henrique back in, and I think starting him off on a bit of a soft minutes third line is the way to break him back in after missing such an extended period of time, that hopefully that line can start to generate something. And they're not going to have the toughest matchups that, say, the McDavid line or the Draisaitl line are going to go up against. So we need that third line to get going. For the Oilers to beat some of the teams that are remaining, that's going to be key for them, is to find that offense from that third line, because we've seen it from the fourth line even. I mean, the only goal the Oilers got in Game 2 came from their fourth line. And the fourth line, I believe, has chipped in 4 goals in the playoffs so far this year. And we're just not seeing that type of production from the third line at all.
No, we're really not. And McLeod has been on the ice for an even strength goal against in each of the last 4 games. Like, it's a concerning trend that can't continue. Like, Dallas, their bottom 6 is better. Like, their third line is better than our third line, right? Yeah. So that's McLeod's matchup. So he needs to find a way to stop the bleeding.
Oh, definitely. And if anyone wants to dig into the Dallas Edmonton breakdown of their positions, forward, defense, and goaltenders, just go read the thread that you and Dash had on Twitter the other day. That was quite a good debate, and it probably could have turned into another heavy hockey face-off article.
It probably still could turn into another heavy hockey face-off article.
I'd like to see that. All right, let's dive into the Western Conference Final now. And in Game 1, the Oilers scored a pair of quick goals in the second period to take a 2-0 lead, but the Stars fought back to tie the game 2-2 late in regulation. And after the first overtime period solved nothing, Connor McDavid scored the game winner just 32 seconds into double overtime to give the Oilers a 3-2 victory and a 1-0 series lead on the road. Ryan, after everything that happened involving McDavid in the first overtime, it seemed fitting that he would score the deciding goal, didn't it?
I mean, the odds are pretty good if you're going into an overtime and you're picking McDavid. Like, your betting odds are pretty good. But yeah, it absolutely was fitting. Like, that was a tough 4-minute penalty to take. Like, I don't think it was intentional by any stretch, but he did get the stick up. It was a penalty, and I know that was a long 4 minutes for McDavid, and the boys did a great job killing it off for him.
As he described it, the longest 4 minutes of his life.
Yeah, that's probably not much of a stretch. But when you make a mistake like that, you want to make up for it. And McDavid's the best player in the world, and there's not many guys that are more well equipped to be able to make up for it on command like that, other than him.
And he just about did, still in the first overtime as well.
Yeah, like maybe overthought it a little bit, but great save by Ottinger. Like, it was a great play by both guys, I thought.
I mean, he give the puck to the best player in the world at the top of the crease. You have to think that that's going in 10 times out of 10.
You would think. And like, McDavid had the presence of mind and the patience to try to outweight Ottinger there. Like, not many guys would even try to do what he tried to do.
I mean, his lateral agility is so great that he can normally shift over, and he would have had the whole top of the net. Maybe Tanev got his stick on it just a little bit to interrupt it, but it's mostly Ottinger getting the paddle out and making just a spectacular save to keep that game going. I mean, I still don't know how he didn't put it in, and he said as much after the game, that he said that puck has to go in, and he would have lost a lot of sleep if the Oilers wouldn't have won that night.
Yeah, I think Tanev played a big role in it. Like, I don't think he actually got a stick there, but like, he was closing in a hurry, and McDavid was trying to
forced him to make the play. Yeah. I mean, and if he would have just shoveled it on net as soon as the puck touched the stick, it probably would have went in.
I'm not even sure about that, just because like he was still kind of in line with Ottinger. Like I said, I don't think McDavid was in the perfect position there, but I don't think he needed to wait as long as he did either.
Right, and I mean, The Oilers controlled most of game one against the Stars, and that was particularly true whenever McDavid stepped on the ice. I mean, he was flying all night, and he made a number of impressive passing plays for scoring chances. He passed Esa Tikkanen for the seventh most playoff points in franchise history. He also tied Leon Draisaitl for the fifth most playoff multi-point games in franchise history. And Dallas has been the site of several memorable moments in McDavid's future Hall of Fame career. Let's remember, he scored his first NHL goal there in 2015. He scored his first NHL hat trick there in 2016, and now he has a playoff overtime goal in that building as well. And while it won't end up on his highlight reel, the importance of that goal cannot be overstated. Ryan, was McDavid's double overtime winner the biggest goal of his NHL career?
It's hard to say that it isn't. Like, it's in the conversation. Like, the series winner against Calgary to get them into the conference finals in 22 is another big one. But like, we're looking to the playoffs, and there's only been so many huge moments in his career in the playoffs. Like, I'm thinking of Game 7 against LA, that 2-0 goal where he kind of walked around behind the net, walked out front, and found a way to get it home. I was in the building
for that breakaway against the Canucks in was it Game 4?
I'm not remembering.
No, the goal when
the breakaway goal.
Yes, the break. I guess that was Game 2. Sorry, against the Canucks.
Right. Yeah, that was another big one. But yeah, I mean, this was Game 1 of a series, but the significance of that particular win was that the Oilers have now advanced the furthest they've ever advanced in McDavid and Draisaitl's careers. Right, where we didn't get a win in the conference finals in 2022, right, but now we have one, right? So we've won the most playoff games we've ever won in the McDavid era.
Yeah, for sure. And I wrote an article about this yesterday because there's plenty of debate amongst Oilers fans about which is McDavid's greatest goal. And for the record, I think his 1-on-4 goal against the New York Rangers in 2021 is the best goal he's ever scored. But as for the most important goal, the consensus pick seems to be his game winner in overtime of Game 5 of the 2022 Western Conference second round to eliminate the Calgary Flames. And it was actually 2 years ago today when he scored that famous goal at the Saddle Dome. And sending your team to the West Final for the first time in 16 years while also knocking off your biggest rival in one fell swoop, that should rocket that goal to the top of the list. But his double overtime winner might be even more significant because when they made it to the Final Four in 2022, yes, that was a massive step forward for this group, but they were completely outmatched by the eventual Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. However, this time around, the Oilers have a deeper team with more playoff experience and a real chance to win the Cup. And for McDavid to come through in the clutch after multiple frustrating moments in the first overtime, as we talked about, to give the Oilers their first win in the conference final since he joined the organization in 2015, I think that this goal has to be at least on par with his series deciding marker against the Flames from 2 years ago.
I think if the Oilers go on to advance to the Cup Finals, I think it'll be right up there with that Calgary series winner. But for now, I think I would give the edge to the Calgary goal, honestly.
Yeah, and I think, like I sort of mentioned, part of it, scoring that goal against the Flames in the Battle of Alberta, that just sort of stands out to fans a little bit more, probably.
Oh, 100%, especially because that goal kind of almost broke the Flames. they had to go into a retool.
I would say it did break the Flames organization.
I was just trying to be a little bit nice to our friends in Calgary.
And if you remember that summer after they made all the moves and Tkachuk was sent out for Huberdeau, they said, okay, you beat us in the playoffs this year, but just wait until next year. We're going to be better than ever. We signed Kadri. We traded for Huberdeau. Look out.
Yeah, and everyone up here was like, you guys just got worse, but sure.
Exactly. And I think the last 2 years would show that to be true. And it's also worth mentioning that with an assist on Zach Hyman's career best 12th goal of the playoffs in Game 1, McDavid recorded his 120th assist of the regular season and playoffs combined. McDavid joined Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and Doug Gilmour as the only players in NHL history to record 120 assists in a single season, including playoffs. It's also the first time it's happened since 1992-93, when Gilmour achieved that with the Maple Leafs. So even though he's had a hat trick in the postseason before and a 5-assist game earlier this spring, I think this has to be considered one of his best playoff performances of his career.
Well, you make a compelling argument. I mean, lots of significant moments and milestones and big moments.
And there probably could have even been more than the 2 points he had.
I mean, we got to give the Stars a little bit of credit because they are a really good defensive team.
Oh, they are, for sure. I mean, if you're going up against maybe Seelov or Talbot in net instead of Jake Ottinger, maybe it does end up being a 4-point night for him.
There's a chance. But,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, when you're going up against the best defensive team remaining in the playoffs, just picking up a multi-point game is still impressive on its own, especially in the fashion he did. But when you're tasked with that, it's going to be hard to have some of those 4 or 5 point nights.
Yeah, and I don't think that should be the expectation in this series. Like, I think it's going to be a low-scoring series. Like, Dallas isn't going to get in their own way with a lot of mistakes. So, I think what we've seen so far in the series is going to be a trend. Just lots of tight checking, low-scoring, tight games.
And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But as for right now, Edmonton's penalty kill continued its impressive run in Game 1, killing off all 5 penalties, including a 4-minute double minor, just 17 seconds into overtime, which we talked about. Ryan, what are you seeing from the Oilers' penalty kill under assistant coach Mark Stewart that has allowed them to successfully kill off 20 consecutive penalties now?
I think the biggest thing I've seen over this stretch is that they've done a really good job of standing up at the blue line and creating turnovers there. Like they're really hard on the puck carrier at the blue line, and as they're coming through the neutral zone, and they're forcing dump ins, and then they're actually doing a good job of retrieving pucks and sending them right back where they came from. So I think that's one big thing, and just how the forwards are really working in unison together and communicating out there. Like they run a unique penalty kill. Like there's not many other teams that run the same type of scheme that they run, and it does take a lot of communication and a lot of really good timing to make sure that low forward is always in the middle protecting that cross ice pass, and then that the high forward is always in a passing lane.
And that's always, or often, I should say, Derek Ryan, who's getting that stick and deflecting pucks out of play. And he talked about that after the game, that McDavid's done so much for this team over the past few years, every year basically since he's been in the league, that they wanted to kill that one off for him and give the Oilers a chance to win that.
Yeah, it's funny how that goes sometimes. Like the type of penalty kind of plays a little bit of a role in how likely the team is to kill it off. Like
they wanted to kill it for their captain, for sure.
Yeah, they want to kill it for their captain, and it wasn't an intentional high stick.
No, of course not. And I mean, really, they could have called Matt Duchene for a hold on that call as well. So if you're going to give McDavid the 4 minutes, sure, but drop it to a 2-minute minor instead of a double minor and give Duchene a holding call.
Yeah, they could have. I mean, I don't think they may not have had the right angle. I don't remember where the refs were standing at that particular moment,
and they're not looking for that either. Too, they're looking for the obvious high stick that drew blood. So that's the first thing that's going to catch their attention.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like they're not looking to even up every single scenario that happens. Like they're focused on the high stick, and they got that. And yeah, you'd have to look at the replay real close to see what Duchene was doing to McDavid's stick there.
And I've talked about this on previous episodes, but having an assistant coach like Mark Stewart, who isn't too far removed from his NHL career and has penalty killed against a lot of the players that are still in this league, do you think that has had an added benefit to the team, as opposed to when, not to take anything away from Dave Manson when he was running the penalty kill, but just having a guy who's played in the league a little more recently?
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't hurt. Like Stewart didn't reinvent the wheel. Like they were running the same type of scheme that Manson was running as well. It's just they're just being a little bit more disciplined with it under Stewart, and they've just had a little bit more luck with it.
And it's often said that your goaltender has to be your best penalty killer, and Stuart Skinner was that in Game 1. He stopped 31 of the 33 shots he faced to earn his third consecutive win in the playoffs. Ryan, since taking back the net in Game 6 against the Canucks, Skinner has been stellar for the Oilers. Do you think he just needed a mental reset after a few tough outings, or are you seeing anything in his technique that's improved over the last few games?
And I'm far from a goaltending expert.
As am I.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be able to break down his technique super well, but
Might have to get Kirk and Bob on here to talk about that as well.
yeah, Bob would tell me to stay in my lane.
Reunite our season preview episode that we had.
Yeah, exactly. But I think a little bit of a mental reset was needed. It happens sometimes, and I've said this about Skinner many times. We get elite Skinner or we get below league average Skinner, and he's streaky like that. And he just went through an extended stretch where he was below league average, like the worst like the worst goalie in the playoffs. But took a couple of games off. We got a couple of good starts from Pickard. And Skinner came in and shut the door, and he's been really good ever since.
Yeah, he's looked a lot more like he did in games 3 and 4 against the Kings in the first round. And I said that I thought those were the best back-to-back games he's played in his playoff career when he only gave up one goal over a span of 2 road games that, gave the Oilers a commanding 3-1 series lead heading home, and they ended up wrapping it up in game 5 back at Rogers Place. But for me, I don't know. I just think that he seems to have improved minimizing the glaring mistakes, and he just looks more calm. He's getting out to the top of his crease, taking away angles. I think his side-to-side movement has been good, and he just seems to be playing a little more relaxed, and that seems to have him back to looking like how he did for the bulk of the regular season when he was arguably a top 10 goalie in the league.
Yeah, and like he's just more calm out there, and a part of it's the team in front of him too. Like I think a lot of Skinner's play did coincide with the Oilers getting a little bit more loose in their defensive coverage, whereas we saw once Knobloch got on at the start of the regular season, and the team did start playing a little bit of a tighter zone defense, that Skinner's game improved alongside them. And we've seen that in the playoffs too. Like Skinner started doing really well when the Oilers started playing defense a lot better in front of him.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could put prime Dominic Hasek behind a last place team, and he's not going to look at his best, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, you have to play well in front of your goaltender if you're going to expect him to make saves. And I mean, that's what we've seen from both teams throughout the first 2 games of the series. And I think going into the West Final, goaltending was probably the biggest perceived advantage that the Stars had over the Oilers. But how encouraging was it for you to see Skinner outduel one of the best goalies in the league and come up with a couple huge saves in overtime on that extended power play for the Stars?
Well, it's definitely encouraging. Like I believe in Skinner. Like I know he has elite goaltending in him. He doesn't do it consistently enough all the time, right?
And that's what's probably holding him back from becoming an established top 10 goalie in the league.
100%, and I believe Bob has him in his top 10 at this point, and like I think Henrik Lundqvist has Skinner in his NHL top 10 at this point.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I think
Skinner
he had him at 8 a while ago.
I can't remember the exact number, but yeah, that 6 to 10 range, somewhere in there. It's like I think Skinner is there. It's just, we want to see a little bit more consistency out of him. But any given Sunday, right?
Yeah. And I mean, for you to draft a guy in the 3rd round that ends up becoming an all-star goalie in his rookie year, what a great start to his career. And I think that, mentally, he's probably looked beyond his years early on in his career. This is probably the first time in this playoffs, that series against the Canucks, where I thought that he looked maybe even a little bit shaken, because, comparing him to Jack Campbell, for example, I think that he's been able to shake off the bad goals quicker than Campbell was.
Oh, 100%. And like, if you just listen to Skinner talk before and after games, like he's really done a lot of work on the mental side of the game. So it's been a big focus of his. So like he has done a good job of being able to hit the reset button and just make the next save. He sounds
so much more mature than a guy who's 25 years old.
Oh, 100%. He absolutely is. Definitely mature beyond his years.
And we have to remember that he's only played 123 games in the NHL. I know they often say that for skaters, you need 300 games to really judge what they are at the NHL level. But for goaltenders, they don't play as much. So I think we're starting to see Skinner establish what his level is in the league. I don't think he's ever going to be at the level of a Jake Ottinger or some of these goalies at the top of the league, like an Igor Shesterkin or Andrei Vasilevsky. But if he can even be right on the cusp, like we said, of being a top 10 goalie, even if he's in that 11-12 range, the Oilers have enough firepower that should be good enough goaltending to get them where they're ultimately trying to go.
It's the firepower and the defensive structure in front of them as well. Like, the defensive structure needs to be intact. But you're totally right. Like, how many Stanley Cups does Carey Price have? How many does Connor Hellebuck have?
Yeah.
Right? This is some
of
the best goaltenders of their era, right? Lundqvist.
He never
doesn't have
one.
a cup.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't need to be the best goaltender in the world to win one. Sure, it helps. Tampa Bay benefited greatly from Andrei Vasilevsky. But like Colorado won with they had their backup and they had Frank Soz in the conference finals, and then Darcy Kemper won him a cup. Right? Look at him now. He's struggling to even keep his job in Washington.
Yeah, and I
right?
mean,
Aiden Hill.
If you compare Canada to say Russia or the U.S., those countries are producing more elite goaltenders than we are in Canada right now. But if you're looking at with the Four Nations face-off next February and the 2026 Winter Olympics the year after that, there is an open competition for the starter's job between the pipes for Team Canada. And if Skinner can continue this trajectory in his career, I think he has a real shot to grab that spot.
Oh yeah, he's definitely in the conversation. Like there's just not many other names that are in the mix, like Jordan Binnington.
Aiden Hill, probably Connor Ingram. I mean, those would be the guys I think he's most likely up against.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see what Hill does. He had a great run to the Stanley Cup, and he did play well when he was healthy this year, but had fought some injuries.
Yeah,
but
and I believe that the Olympic rosters don't have to be confirmed until New Year's Eve of 2025. So that still gives him all of next season and roughly half of the season after that to earn a spot on Team Canada. And I'm confident enough that where the Oilers are headed, and they should be a top team for the next 2 years at least, with McDavid and Draisaitl still leading the charge, that you'd hope that Skinner can continue to push himself into that conversation even more and more. And hopefully, like we said, by the time that the calendar flips to 2026, he's sort of taken over as the front runner to get that job.
Yeah, I would be putting the odds in Skinner's favor right now, to be honest.
And there could be a decent Oilers contingency on Team Canada. Not that I want to derail the conversation going to the Olympics too much, but I mean, you'd think that Connor McDavid is obviously going to be the first line center and hopefully the captain of the team as well. I think that Evan Bouchard has likely at least earned himself a top 6 spot, if not higher in the lineup. So there's going to be a couple Oilers on the team as well. I would have liked to think that either Nuge or Zach Hyman could earn a spot there as well, but making Team Canada is so tough. I think it's the toughest team in hockey to make.
It's a real tough team to make for sure, but it depends on who's making that roster and what they want on the team. Like Chris Kunitz would have, you would never think Chris Kunitz would have made Team Canada.
Crosby got him there because of the chemistry, and maybe that's what gets Zach Hyman there, the connection with McDavid. And who knows what he's going to look like 2 years from now. Let's hope that he's still at the same level or close to where he's at right now. I don't know if he's going to repeat 54 goals. We're not even saying next season, but the season after that. But if he's still a consistent 30-goal guy, like we said, that built-in chemistry with McDavid could be what ultimately gets him a spot on the team.
And Hyman plays a simple, straight-ahead, physical game. Like, he plays winning hockey, right? And you need guys that can do that in an Olympic tournament.
Having a couple battlers for sure will help. And in Game 2, the Stars struck first, but the Oilers answered back just 44 seconds later. But unfortunately, Dallas scored twice in the third period, including an empty netter to win the game 3-1 and even the series at 1 apiece. Ryan, the Oilers outshot the Stars 16-5 in the first period and easily could have been up a couple goals after 20 minutes. Did their failure to convert on some of those early chances cost them the game, in your opinion? Or was it more that they didn't generate enough scoring opportunities in the final 40 minutes?
I think it's both. I mean, you outshoot a team 16-4 in a period, and you only come out with one goal, and you don't even have the lead. I think you're pretty disappointed in that, given the shot clock totals. But I mean, yeah, the Oilers failed to generate a lot of quality chances, but I got to give Dallas some credit. Like, they were really tough to play against. I thought they were annoying as all can be in the neutral zone. Right, like I saw a lot of Oilers skaters have to stop with the puck and then have to reverse it and reverse course just because a Stars forechecker was shutting it down in the neutral zone and they were breaking up passes. The Oilers had a real tough time gaining the offensive zone with control because the Stars were really good in the neutral zone.
And that's what makes it so frustrating that they didn't cash in on the chances they have. I can think of the Matthias Janmark wraparound attempt that it looked like he almost rushed it a little bit. If he would have just hung onto the puck for another half a second and maybe even stretched a little more in front, that he could have buried that one. And Evander Kane was digging away at a puck in the crease, and I still don't know how that one didn't make its way over the line. There was also that Dylan Holloway rush down the wing where he kind of cut to the middle and actually crashed into Ottinger. He didn't get a penalty on the play. Surprisingly, I thought that he was probably going to get goaltender interference there, but maybe the refs thought that he pushed that a defender pushed him into the goalie a little bit. But there were some chances, so I think that the Oilers should have been ahead 3-1 after the first period. And at that point, you think with how tight the game is that hopefully they could have hung on and, like we said, sealed that second straight victory on the road. But ultimately, it came down to a kind of a fluky point shot, as you talked about off the top, that deflected in off Marchment and in. And that's one you probably would have liked to see Ryan McLeod get in the way of. Unfortunately, he didn't. And that kind of maybe just adds to the frustration around the player right now.
Yeah, that was the one he was on the ice for. I was more worried about Derek Ryan. He was very slow to get to that puck. Like Vinny Darnay chipped it around the boards in the corner, and Ryan got there very slowly, took a look around to see who was coming, where the pressure was coming from, but the pressure got there before he made a play with the puck. Then
and it's something
went up to Ryan Suter.
Yeah, and it's something that's kind of frustrated me these first two games as well, as there's been too many times where the Oilers have full control of the puck and they don't get it out of the zone. I mean, when you have a second or two of time and no one on you, there's no reason that puck shouldn't get out of the zone. And there's too many times where it's either been passed up the middle instead of going off the boards and out, or they flip it up and it gets gloved down. Just make sure that puck gets out, because the margin for error is razor thin right now, especially against a stingy defensive team like Dallas. And the last thing you want to be doing is feeding their offense with bad turnovers.
No, you can't. You can't afford to have turnovers. Like, the Stars are a really good team off the rush, and like we saw it with Jamie Benn's goal, the first one of the game. CC pinched at the blue line, and yeah, the puck didn't get by him right away, but it did get by him, and then he didn't. I think it was Holloway that was late to get back, but they didn't have the third forward high, so we saw a 2-on-1 and a goal against. It's like, it's little things like that cost you games at this late in the season.
Yeah, they have to clean that up, because you can get away with that a little bit against LA and maybe even to an extent Vancouver, but once you get down to the final four teams, everyone remaining is so good, and they will make you pay for those kind of mistakes.
Absolutely, and every team's going to make mistakes. It's just how many or how few can you make, right? Like, the team that makes the least mistakes is going to win.
Yeah, I had a feeling when it was 1-1. You just said this game is so tight. It's going to come down to someone's going to have a turnover, or there's going to be a mistake, and that's what's going to end up in the back net. It's not going to be a beautiful goal that gives some team the 2-1 lead.
Yeah, and there really haven't been many pretty goals in this series. Like, there were a couple of plays that there were goals off of broken plays in game one, and then we got the deflection game winner in game two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think what the nicest goal the Oilers have scored would even be.
Maybe the McDavid overtime winner.
I mean, yeah, Hyman just followed up a play and shoveled a puck home. Draisaitl grabbed a loose rebound. I mean, honestly, the best move might have been Connor Brown picking up the rebound and deking 5-hole.
Yeah, it might have been.
And in game two, we saw Leon Draisaitl's 13-game playoff point streak come to an end. McDavid was also held off the score sheet as the Oilers' lone goal came from the fourth line, as I mentioned, Brown getting that one. Ryan, the Oilers have shown the ability to win low-scoring games in the playoffs this year, but going up against the best defensive team remaining in the playoffs makes it that much tougher to win a tight checking game. That said, the Oilers are a great home team and score a ton of goals at Rogers Place. How much confidence does that give you that the Oilers will be able to finally break out offensively tomorrow night?
I think I've already talked about the fact that I don't think this is going to be a track meet. Like, this is going to be a low-scoring, tight-checking series. I don't expect a 4 or 5 goal breakout from the Oilers in any game in this series, just because the Stars are so good, and the Stars are a really good road team. Like, I think they're the best road team in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they are, because they lost the first 2 games against Vegas in the first round, and then they lost game 1 against the Avs in round 2 as well. So that would make sense.
Yeah. So they lose the first 2 at home to Vegas, and then they went into Vegas and won the next
both,
2.
Yeah. So we need to definitely break that trend as it goes back to Rogers Place now.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, you look at the Oilers' big guns, they're not going to be the ones getting it done every night. And like I said, it has been good that the fourth line is chipping in. But you'd like to think that there's going to be a game eventually where McDavid and Draisaitl get 2 or 3 points here each, and the Oilers are able to maybe pull out a 4-2 win with an empty netter or something like that. And the perfect time is for it to happen now that they're heading to a building where they've had a great record all season. The only time the Stars visited Rogers Place was back in November, and that was right after the Heritage Classic. I remember they had a 4-game losing streak, and that ultimately led to Jay Woodcroft being replaced by Chris Knobloch, and then everything started to right the path after that. But Sam Gagner actually scored 2 goals in that game, and he's someone we've talked about getting back into the lineup too. On the last episode, I said, even just from a sentimental standpoint, I'd like to see a player that I've watched for his entire career over the past 17 years finally play a playoff game for the Oilers. But I don't think that is going to happen unless there are multiple injuries. But just that being said, they have to find a way to get a little more offense from the big guys, and maybe that will come if the Oilers are able to generate a few more power plays. And I want to go there now because head coach Chris Knobloch was asked in his post-game presser last night about the Oilers' inability to draw penalties in this series. The Stars have had 6 power plays through 2 games, while the Oilers have had only 3, and the last one came late in game 2 when the Stars basically already had the win secured. Ryan, this has been an ongoing discussion for several years, but because of Edmonton's historically dominant power play, do you think the officials are hesitant to give the Oilers too many looks with the man advantage?
It's hard to be in the head of an official, and they can't. Yeah, we know there's a little bit of game management that happens. There's always there's infractions that happen that don't get called in every game, both ways, right? So that there might be a little bit of that happening, but we got to remember that the Stars were the most disciplined team throughout the regular season. Like, they've taken the least penalties out of anybody in the entire league. And that's a trait of their team, is they are really, really disciplined.
But we're seeing you're watching the same as we're seeing the ones that they're getting away with too, right? I mean, there was a hold on McDavid late in game 1 where he had his arm almost wrapped up behind his back. I'm trying to remember who did that. It might have been Suter. And I mean, Matthias Ekholm got dumped face planted right in front of the net in the slot in game 1 as well. So you're seeing some of these not get called. And I mean, I don't think that there's any conspiracy theory or anything like that, but I do think that the officials know giving the Oilers too many chances with the power plays is giving them a major advantage in the game because they win so many games off their power play. So they make them work a little extra hard to get them in. That is different from the other sports. I mean, hockey is the one game where it seems like there's a different set of rules for the regular season and playoffs. You compare that to the NFL or the NBA, the consistency in the calls doesn't really change from game 1 of the regular season to game 7 of the NBA finals. And I'd love if that was the same for hockey and that the superstars of the game were protected the same way that they are in football and basketball. And it just has never been a trait that's crossed over into the NHL. And it sort of favors the less skilled teams, I believe. And I'm not saying the Dallas Stars are a less skilled team, but I mean, it does let players who are further down the lineup, the depth guys, the grinders, to get away with more, and it sort of punishes the superstars of the game like McDavid and Draisaitl.
I've talked about this a lot in the past, but I just want the rule book to be called the way
So
it
do
was
I.
written.
I
Right?
honestly,
Just call the penalty. I don't care.
I would rather that they call everything on the Oilers as long as they call everything on the Stars too, because I'm confident that even if they're an even split between the two teams, that the Oilers are going to make the most of their power plays over the opposition. And really, when you have a player like Connor McDavid, he should be drawing more penalties than anyone else, so the Oilers should be getting more power plays.
Yeah, the point about McDavid is true. I mean, he's the fastest player in the game, and he's got, like, especially with the puck, like, there's nobody faster with the puck than McDavid. He has the puck a lot. So,
I mean, it's inconceivable that it's inconceivable he doesn't draw multiple penalties every single game.
For sure, but that's where it's like, okay, we can't give the Oilers 6 or 7 power plays a game. I think that's where that mentality comes in. But like, call the rule book, right? I don't care if the power plays are lopsided for one team or another. Call the infractions as they
am 100% on board with everything you just said. And if it means that it's 8 power plays for one team and 4 for the other, then so be it. Don't take penalties. You know, like if you don't want to give the Oilers too many power play opportunities, then stop committing infractions. And I mean, it's not as bad as it was 3 years ago in that series against the Winnipeg Jets, where McDavid probably should have been drawing about 8 penalties a game. That was
how you go 4 games with 0 penalties against McDavid, and I remember at least 3 that were blatant. Yeah, that was ridiculous.
I believe it was Rachel Dory, who works in analytics, who went back and watched all of McDavid's shifts from the 4 games against the Jets, and I think she counted 30 penalties that were called on him. And remember, she is not an Oilers homer by any means. She is impartial. And to watch all the shifts back, count the infractions on him from an unbiased perspective, and say that he should have been drawing about 8 power plays a game in that series, it's unfathomable that the refs didn't give him 1 call.
Yeah, it was unfathomable. I'm still angry about it.
and you'd hear some people saying like, oh, you know, you have to be a veteran in the league to get the veteran calls. And I'm just thinking, like, by that point, McDavid was 24 years old. It was his 6th year in the league. He had already won 3 scoring titles by then, 2 MVPs, and he had 4 100 points, or I guess it'd be 5 100-point seasons.
No, you got to earn it, Eric. You got to.
I mean, if that doesn't earn it, I don't know what will. You got to be Ryan Getzlaf that have played in the league for 15 years. Like, I mean, it doesn't make sense. But like I said, it's not that bad. We are seeing McDavid draw penalties in these playoffs, but I mean, obviously there is still a disparity with the Stars having twice the amount of calls that the Oilers have had. So you'd like to see that switch a little bit. And considering how good the Oilers power play is, especially at home, it'd be nice if the Oilers could get, 3 or 4 looks on the man advantage tomorrow night.
Yeah, that would be nice. Like, the special teams are the biggest advantage that the Oilers have in this series. So the more power plays we can get, the better.
And we talked about their penalty kill as well, and their penalty kill's been even better than their power play.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, we don't want to have to rely on it, but it's been a big part of why they are where they are right now.
And before the Oilers went on that 1 for 12 run on the power play, they were up at 46%, I believe, and now it's dropped down to about 36%. So that really killed it towards the end of that series against the Canucks, where, like I said, it dropped 10 points. But I mean, the penalty kill is still over 90%. So if you would have told an Oilers fan going into these playoffs that, yeah, the Oilers are still going to have a dominant power play that's, hovering around 40%, but their penalty kill is going to be even better, I don't know how many people would have bought that.
No, I wouldn't have.
I mean, 92% on the PK. And they flashed that stat up on Sportsnet last night that the Oilers' combined special teams efficiency is currently the highest in NHL history when you add power play percentage and penalty kill percentage together this year. So, like you said, having a dominant year on special teams. And they're getting the kills when the Stars are getting their chances, but hopefully it'll turn in the other way, and the Oilers will start getting some power plays in their favor.
Yeah, I mean it's a long series. The Oilers are going to get some power plays, and they're going to get a couple power play goals here or there. Like it'll be a difference in at least one game for sure. But the thing I like about that Sportsnet stat the most is that 3 of those other 4 teams on the screen there had won the Stanley Cup that
exactly.
year.
So let's hope that and I mean, we see other stats too, right? Like the Oilers, I believe, were the first team in NHL history to have 3 players with 20 points through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. And every other team that's even had 2 players with 20 points through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs all went on to win the Cup. So that's a trend that you'd like to see continue as well. And I mean, everything is suggesting that this team has what it takes to win a championship this year. But I mean, they still have to win 3 games against the best team in the Western Conference. And hopefully they can pick up another one of those tomorrow night in game 3. And Ryan, since you're the creator of our call-outs, standouts, and shoutouts post-game recaps at heavyhockey.com, who else stood out to you in game 2, and who needs to elevate their play as the series shifts back to Edmonton for games 3 and 4?
In game 2, I mean, Connor Brown got that big goal, so I thought his play, aside from the goal, was really good as well. Like I think his legs look the fastest that they've been all season. So I think we're further removed from his knee injury now, obviously, and he's had a lot more time to recover and skate. But his skating is looking like it's almost back to where he was pre-injury, so that's a good sign for Brown.
Yeah, a broken leg will set you back for 2 years. So, I mean,
yeah,
but that's what we were hoping for, right? I mean, when they signed him, they knew that he was going to have a bit of a slow start. Obviously, that slow start lasted a lot longer than we thought it would. But 54 games until he finally potted one. But I was confident that he would score a big goal in the playoffs, and I guess you could argue that goal did come last night. Unfortunately, the Oilers weren't able to secure the victory with it, but. Yeah, nice to see him scoring in the playoffs now.
Yeah, 100%. It's good to see. I mean, yeah, it was frustrating with him struggling the way he was in the regular season and with the performance bonus and all that. But he's been a big part of a fourth line that's been really good over the past handful of games. So let's hope that keeps up.
Who else was real positive for you in the first 2 games?
I thought Skinner was really good in both games. Like none of the goals against, I think, were his faults. Like, yeah, maybe the Ben goal you'd like to see a save on, but he didn't really have a chance on any of the other ones. And he's made lots of really good saves in the first 2 games. So I thought Skinner was really good.
And we did talk about. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you have anyone else that you wanted to give a shout out to before we go on to the call outs?
Yeah, no, those are the 2 so far. Like, I think everybody else has kind of been like just kind of average compared to their standards so far.
And you did talk about Ryan McLeod earlier in the podcast and his struggles, but who else really needs to step up as the series now goes home?
I mean, yeah, McLeod, I think, is the biggest one that absolutely needs to step up. Aside from that, though, like I'm gonna call on the big boys here, right? Connor, Leon, Nuge, Hyman, those guys. They, especially in game 2, they didn't generate a lot, and Dallas kind of stifled them. And you said the point streak for Draisaitl got snapped. McDavid didn't get a point in game 2, but the Oilers are going to go as far as those guys can carry them. Like ultimately, that's where the team's offense is going to come from. So those guys need to step up and bring their A games at home here.
I mean, Draisaitl's home point streak is still intact, and he has 12 points in those 6 games. So let's hope that he can keep that going with another multi-point game in game 3 as well.
Yeah, let's hope for it.
And also, Connor McDavid is just 2 points away from reaching the century mark as well. Leon Draisaitl already had his 100th point season a couple games ago and became the 3rd fastest player in NHL history to reach that mark. McDavid can become the 4th fastest player if he gets there in the next 3 games. I believe he'll get there a little quicker than Jari Kurri if he's able to do so. So, I mean, if he could pick up 2 points tomorrow night as well, that would go a long way towards a big victory.
It really would. Most nights, if you're getting 2 points out of McDavid, then your odds of winning are pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you go back and look up the Oilers' record in games when he has multi-point games, it's probably a pretty favorable record.
I would imagine so, yeah.
And lastly, I mean, I know we both had the Oilers reaching the Stanley Cup final before the season when you were on my prediction show. So we obviously think they're going to win this series. But what is your prediction for these next two games on home ice?
I'm thinking it's going to be another split. Like Dallas is such a good road team, but we are also really good at home. And like I think this is going to be tight all the way through this series. I can't see either one of us being up 3-1 at the end of 4 games.
I mean, it would be great if they could pick up both wins, obviously. But yeah, I mean, a lot to ask to beat one of the best teams in the league back-to-back games. I mean, if there's anything that's in their favor now, it's that they're going to be able to control the matchups a little bit more, that they're on home ice. So hopefully you can get McDavid and Draisaitl out there for a few more offensive zones and against not having to go up against Dallas's top defensive pairing. So if they can get that advantage a little more often, maybe they're able to put 1 or 2 more past Ottinger than they have the last couple games.
Yeah, you never know how the matchups are going to work out, but there's just, it's going to sound cliche, but there's just something about playing in front of your home crowd that brings out a little extra something in you. So,
and I mentioned how great their record is at home this year. I believe they had the most wins in the NHL after November 11th, both overall and on home ice. So that is something that we'll be looking for to continue on Monday night. And for McDavid and Draisaitl to get a few more power play opportunities as well, that will go a long way. But I know that we can't bank on too many of those. So, I mean, even if they can get 3 power plays, that'll be great. But the good thing is that we know that these guys can get it done at even strength. I mean, most of their offense, despite how great their playoffs have been, has come at even strength in these playoffs. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, they were leading the league in even strength goals coming into the series, and that's been a big criticism of theirs. They were too reliant on the power play to get wins, but we've already seen Dallas is a disciplined team, and the calls aren't going to come easy in this series. So the special teams or the power play isn't going to be the big deciding factor that we hope it will be. So they're going to have to figure it out 5-on-5.
Yeah, if you look at it right now, Draisaitl 13 even strength points, 12 power play points. McDavid 12 even strength points, 11 power play points. So close to even, but still the advantage in even strength production for them.
Yeah, that's good, and that's where it needs to be.
And Ryan, just before we call it a night, you mentioned that you have a new article out right now. Can you talk a little about that? And then where can people follow you?
Yeah, so the article is called "Is McLeod's defensive play compensating for his lack of offense?" Just kind of, I know there's been a bit of a back and forth on Twitter. Some people are calling out McLeod for his lack of offensive production, and some people are saying, "Oh, he's playing great shutdown defense, so lay off the kid." So I dove into the numbers a little bit and tried to figure out what's going on. Is it just him playing poorly offensively? Is he actually playing good defense, or is he struggling in the defensive end as well? So I won't spoil it for you, although if you've listened to the whole show, you might have already got some of the answers. But you can find that at heavyhockey.com, and you can follow me on X at LotsRyan.
All right, and you can follow me at Eric J. Friesen on Twitter, and you can follow this podcast at 99 Forever Pod. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for being on the show again tonight, and you did say that the Oilers would win one of these next 2 games, but give me a score prediction for tomorrow night.
Oh, let's give an Oilers win here. I'll say 3-2 Oilers.
Okay, I'm going to go with 4-2 Oilers with an empty net goal.
All right.
All right, let's hope that either one of our predictions goes right. Ryan, thanks again for being on the show tonight. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. It's always a pleasure.
Looking forward to it. All right, so for Ryan Lotsberg, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever Podcast. We're out.